Who here likes Christmas? I mean, what's not to like, right? You got presents and decorations and presents and Christmas carols and presents and cookies and, did I mention presents? So Christmas is nice for all of those reasons. But the most important part of Christmas, the reason for the season, is the incarnation. When God emptied himself of all of his glory, his heavenly glory, and came to earth as a human being and was born as that baby, Jesus in Bethlehem. And God did that to show us his love. Ever since the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth, God had been shouting from heaven, "I love you!" But we humans, for the most part, missed the memo. Sometimes because we couldn't understand what he was saying, sometimes because we rejected the messenger, and often because we just didn't believe him. So rather than shouting from heaven, God wrapped himself in skin and came to earth, not just to tell us that he loves us, but to show us his love by feeding hungry people and healing sick people and listening to lonely people and accepting outcasts. You see, everything that Jesus ever said or did demonstrates God's love for us. Jesus came to earth to show us his love and to experience everything we do as human beings. Now, if you were born into privilege and position and you never go through any really tough times, it's easy to tell folks going through difficulty to quit whining, suck up, put on a happy face, and get on with life. But let us go through a mess or two of our own, and we get much more empathetic and sympathetic to folks who are slogging through the messes in their life. Jesus, who was God in heaven, gave up the perks of being God and not only came to earth as a human being, as if that weren't tough enough, he came with a bunch of strikes against him. He was born a poor person in a land occupied by a foreign army, to parents who weren't married when his mom got pregnant, which raised all kinds of doubts about who his real dad might be. And as we heard on Good Friday from Isaiah, he was despised and rejected by people, and then falsely accused, cruelly condemned, and unjustly executed. And not quickly and mercifully, but he was beaten and then nailed to a cross. Whatever difficulties we go through, Jesus understands them all because he went through all the same stuff and worse. He was just like us, except without sin. Jesus came to earth to show us his love, to experience everything we do, and to absorb our selfishness and our sin and our sicknesses. Jesus didn't just empathize with us and how tough life is. He actually soaked up all of our selfishness and our sickness. St. Paul puts it this way in his second letter to his friends in Corinth. Jesus, who had no sin, became sin for us, that in him we might become the righteousness of God. Jesus took our selfishness into himself, and in return he gave us his righteousness, his right relationship with God. He took our sickness and shared with us and gave us in return his health. Not a bad deal for us. Jesus came to earth to show us his love, to experience life as a human being, to absorb our selfishness, sin, and sicknesses, and to die in our place on the cross to pay the penalty for our mistakes. All of our mistakes, all human mistakes, the mistakes of every person, beginning with the first ones in the Garden of Eden. You know, that first couple whom God put in a perfect environment, in a perfect relationship with him and each other, gave them only one rule: don't eat the fruit from that tree over there, because if you do, you die. Which means that every disobedience to God is a capital offense. And of course, they ate it. You know the story. And because they did, death became no longer a possibility, but an inevitability for them and for us. Because every human being ever since has disobeyed God and put themselves under a death penalty. But God, in his love and mercy, came to earth as a human being to absorb our selfishness and sickness into himself and to die in our place on the cross to pay the penalty for our mistakes and to swap his perfection for our imperfection. Once again, not a bad deal for us. Somebody asked me this past Friday, why is it called Good Friday when it went so badly for Jesus? Well, it's Good Friday because although it was bad, very bad for Jesus, it was good, very good for us. As Jesus died in our place to pay the penalty for our mistakes and set us free from the consequences of our own selfishness. But if Good Friday were the end of the story and all Jesus did was die, that would be nice, but just sad. Because everybody dies. And why would his death be any different from anybody else's? Well, that's because the cross, however, is not the end. As we heard today from the Gospel of John, very early on that first day of the week, Mary Magdalene, Peter, and John went to the tomb, and it was empty. Not because the gardener or anybody else had stolen the body, but because Jesus rose from the dead. And Jesus rose from the dead to demonstrate his defeat of death, that he's stronger than death. And there's nothing for us to fear anymore about the grave or the grim reaper, because if Jesus can come back from the dead, there ain't nothing he can't do. Nothing is impossible for God. Jesus rose from the dead to show he's stronger than death and to offer us new life. You see, because Jesus rose from the dead, we will too. So once again, we have nothing to fear from death. It can't kill you. Jesus rose from the dead to show he's stronger than death, to offer us new life, and to finish what he began at Christmas, when he emptied himself of his glory as God, came to earth, and was born as that baby in Bethlehem as Jesus. So who here likes Christmas? Christmas is nice. It's how and when Jesus got here to show us his love, to experience life like we do, to absorb our selfishness and sin and sicknesses, and to die in our place to pay the penalty for our mistakes. But Jesus didn't stay dead. He rose again to show that he's stronger than death, to offer us new life, and to finish what he started at Christmas. Now, yes, Christmas is nice, but Easter is amazing. And if you like Christmas, you'll love Easter. And you're going to love it because God loves you, and he invites you into his family. And Jesus came to earth at Christmas, died on Good Friday, and rose again on Easter to make that possible. And if you've never said yes to Jesus' invitation, or if you haven't said yes to God recently, today's the perfect day to fix that. To pray, yes, Jesus, you came and died and rose again for me, and I will live for you. You can pray it as we baptize Jerry and Rebecca and renew our own baptismal covenant. You can pray it during communion when you come up for the bread and wine. Or you can pray it in the chapel with some people who will be in there and pray it with you. Or you can pray it by yourself after you leave here. But God loves you and invites you into his family forever. And if you like Christmas, don't miss what God offers you on Easter.